Hi everyone, Rory here. I'm currently working in my office. I recently returned from a trip to Nicaragua and I'm making a quick video as a recap for my experience there. Um, I want to share it with whoever's interested. It was exciting, interesting, rewarding, along with somewhat confusing, difficult, and a little dangerous, but it was awesome. I rented a car, I got lost many times, I made it to the beach, I rode on horseback, I surfed. I met some amazing people along the entire trip, and we shared experiences and swapped stories. I worked hard using some of my old skills that I've had, and I found some new skills as well. I learned and I grew. I played and I laughed and I made memories and I cried a little too. I was so present and everything was rich and vibrant. It was wonderful, and I'm so grateful for the opportunity that I had there. Um, I had a rough last year or so personally, where I was feeling stuck and like I wasn't on a path with heart. Like I was trudging through mud but not really getting anywhere. And I knew on the surface things were going okay. I had a lot to be grateful for and still do. But underneath, I just felt lost and unfulfilled. My experience with grid in Nicaragua came at me like an orange life ring, and I grabbed it with desperation. Um, it pulled me up and has become one of the most rewarding experiences of my life so far. And so I encourage others to keep following your dreams, stay strong, be patient, and keep an eye out for those life rings because they're going to come around. Okay, so I need to take it back a little bit to where this all started. When I was still living in California, like 10 plus years ago after the Coast Guard, I was taking a solar class at Cabrillo College and I was told about a nonprofit called Grid Alternatives. And they install solar for low income homeowners and provide free solar training and experience to volunteers. So I did several installations with them over the course of that whole semester and into the summer, which put me on kind of the long path towards ultimately becoming an electrician and a solar installer, which is what I do today. Um, when I found out about Grid Alternatives International program, I was extremely interested because it's always been a dream of mine to travel to Mexico and Central America. I never thought I would be able to afford such an experience, but with a substantial donation from my family members, all of a sudden it was within reach. So I signed up for a trip to Mexico about 2 years ago, but the pandemic put everything on hold. And then when the trips finally resumed, Mexico was off the table. But there was an opportunity in Nicaragua, and so I jumped at it. And now looking back on it, it's like I was supposed to go to Mexico, but I was meant to go to Nicaragua because everything just worked out perfectly. So what I'm going to share is just all of my exploits throughout the entire journey, and hopefully I can keep it concise and to the point and somewhat brief. But hopefully, if you're interested, you'll enjoy coming along with me on the ride. So here we go. Well, this is one of my first pictures in the country. It's not a very good one, but it captures a few things. It's a poor country. There's lots of riding on the backs of vehicles. These young people have no shoes on, which I thought was interesting. They're hauling some fruit. There's motorcycles zipping everywhere. Traffic is bonkers. It's a crazy place. I'm using this screenshot of the map in the capital, Managua, to show that my rental car was supposed to come with a GPS unit, but it did not, and my phone didn't work, and so this screenshot was among the many things I had to use to get where I was going. I got lost a whole bunch. I had to rely on the kindness of a lot of people. People like these guys. I met a lot of folks, literally like 10 different people at gas stations. I met these guys at a convenience store. It was a man and a wife and their kids. The lady helped pull up the map on her phone and get me directions, and my Spanish was so poor, everything was super difficult. Eventually, I made it onto a highway that looked like this, headed for El Transito, a beach town. There was lots of horse-drawn equipment here and there, and motorcycles galore, and lots of honking. I only had to stop once on this road to make sure I didn't pass the place, but it took forever. I got onto a gravel road. It took me 45 minutes. The road was gnarly. Got there just before dark. Met Judy the next morning. I met Monty, and before I know it, I'm going for a ride on the mean streets of El Transito on Monty, riding along the cobblestones, which were limited. Most of the town was covered in gravel roads. So it's amazing, right? I made it to the beach. I got to ride around. It's beautiful. Fishing is one of the main industries in the town, and they run the boats right up on the beach, and then they roll them back and forth on these big logs. Here's Monty in front of my rental car. They were both lean and mean cruising machines, and I had a blast with both of them, although I wish the tires on the rental car were slightly larger because the gravel road was gnarly. It was such a relief to meet this guy right before dark the prior night. Him and I had a ton in common. He runs Casa de los Cocos, and I had a blast. Aw, here's a selfie for Anna. Hi, I'm alive. I rode on horses. I got lost. I surfed. I had fun. I'm totally blissed out. Time for some tacos with my friend Juan. And then off to more adventures back to the capital. Hey, they found my bag. That's awesome. It spent an extra night in Panama for some reason. And I didn't even bring a checked bag because I didn't want this to happen. But it happened anyway. So what are you going to do? So we have dinner the previous night. It's wonderful. Meet some people, make some small talk. The next morning we have official orientation. The crew is now fully assembled and we're ready to depart. We spend the better part of a day traveling to where we're going in a little rented minivan. Along the way I meet a spider monkey. We stop for lunch. There are a few exploits throughout the day that I don't cover, but that's fine. We make it to the hotel and the next morning is when it all begins. Each of the 3 days that we spent there start off with a nice little lovely walk down to the river, and then a somewhat precarious river crossing that we all started getting really good at after a few times. Okay, and enter Ramona Rodriguez. So she is the reason why we're here, and her family. She lost her husband during the COVID-19 pandemic, very tragically so, after many, many, many years together working on this farm. Now her son and daughter-in-law are the main forces behind running the farm, along with some other helpers and some workers. But this is where we get to meet the family and really get the project started. This is the main farmhouse where the family lives. Now I know at first glance, using your sort of American eyes, it looks pretty rugged, but the house was actually super neat. It had a few multiple levels, so you could tell it was kind of built over time and had some pretty artwork and some plants inside. It was very comfortable. The kitchen was always bustling with these lovely ladies working on the meals. We had great meals and constant coffee breaks, which was really awesome. This was their stove that they cooked everything on. It was all flame fired, and this was their oven. And one of the days we did a cultural activity where we made these little cookies, and they were delicious, and it was just neat to see them using this really simple setup to have great results. This was sort of our makeshift dining hall where we had meals and awesome conversation every day. And the orange drink was passion fruit, which came from the farm, and it was delicious. Okay, so I thought that this was super interesting personally, as a strange coincidence, I guess. But recently I found myself on a path towards spirituality, and I think it's important and necessary. And I was raised Catholic and kind of fell away from the church, and have found myself taking an interest in it once again. And so recently I started wearing a pennant for St. Jude for a lot of reasons I won't get into, but this is a prayer card for San Judas, or St. Jude in Spanish. It's a beautiful prayer. It helps people in difficult or impossible circumstances. And this was laminated on the table in the house, and I just thought that was very interesting. I hiked up top to see the cows, or vacas. These cows were used for milk, or leche, and they were an important activity on the farm every morning. Here's a donkey they use for packing crops seasonally when they need to. I hiked up this beautiful little pathway to a pasture up top where I ran into the horse that I had ridden the previous day, named Cora. Early on after we arrived, we hiked up to the top of the hill to the tank that was going to hold the water for the irrigation system. It needed a little bit of maintenance, and then it needed to get painted blue, so one of the teams did that, while I was able to start building the solar system. I was working with a small team, of course, and there was another team working on the pumping situation, but here we are getting the first panel installed. Very exciting when the first panel goes up. And hey, look at me, a happy solar installer. So here we got the first 4 panels up and ready for 4 more. Almost complete. And then uno más, only 1 panel to go. Very exciting. Well, if you ever find yourself in another country with a spud bar in your hands, you know you're having a good time digging through some rocks and some concrete foundation from some old thing. But we had to burn a pretty serious trench from the water intake all the way up the hill. Luckily, there was lots of people on site for that, but it was tough work. But we got our trench all the way up the hill to the containment area. So we ran a bunch of PVC pipes through the trench, covered it back up. This is where the water comes into the tank. There's a filter. When we were digging that part, we uncovered a gigantic scorpion, and that was terrifying. Uh, let's see, this is the tank filling up, and then this is the water coming out of the other side of the tank, going down to a sort of a distribution network, where we're working on it here. And then some additional work to seal up some leaks, and then this is a picture of the giant field that it's going to be irrigating over the coming seasons. It's basically a giant orchard, mostly guavas, but there are a number of other fruits that they're also going to be growing, and this is going to allow the farm and the farm workers to have more productivity because they're going to be able to produce a lot more crops throughout the year. So it's really going to have an impact on what they're able to bring in financially. Okay, so this is sort of the view from the bottom. You can see the array in the background. The pump is in this pit in the foreground, and then the pipe runs all the way up to the containment on top of the hill. And what you have is a man-made irrigation trench that runs past the barn in order to water the cows, but what they're able to do is divert some of that water into this tank that goes down into the well where the pump is at, and then that pump sends it up top. So after about 3 days of hard work on the farm, we were able to complete everything. Here's the array in all its glory, and then there's a pump controller and a disconnect switch, which Arlen is pretty much about to throw on and test everything and commission the system. Oh, the sweet, sweet sound of a water pump running on clean power from the sun. So that's the man-made trench that comes off of the river nearby. There's the initial intake from the trench that has a screen filter on it. It brings it into this small containment area, and then there's another transition pipe with some mesh filter action on it, and then it dumps into the well where the pump is at. And that sends the water up that line that we buried in all the way up top to the tank. So after the work was completed and the system was up and running, we got the chance to take a really cool farm tour. This picture is the passion fruit that was growing on the vines, which we got to drink with our lunch every day. We also saw sugar cane, which is grown mostly for the cows, but we also got to try some, and it's a tasty snack. And a lot of other fruits and vegetables came from the farm as well. I got to go riding a whole bunch with a couple other people, and it was really fun. I was so stoked to get to ride this pony, Cora, down the road with Valeria in front of me and Rosa in front of her. It was Valeria's first time, and since she's from northern Nicaragua, she said there's a stereotype that everyone from up there is either a vaquero or a vaquera, cowboys and cowgirls, and so she was happy to lean into the tradition of her heritage, where she comes from, and ride. Rosa described all that to me. She spoke English pretty well and had ridden several times. I'm still eager to learn about the breed of horse they had there. They were all gated, so they kind of reminded me of like a Pasfino or something. This is definitely my favorite picture from the whole trip. It's always fun to do things that you are good at, and I'm good at installing solar, and I love riding horses, and so this is just great. After we got done, we had a little downtime, and I had to string up my hammock underneath the array and enjoy the shade. It was awesome. I laid there for a while and relaxed and added some notes to my journal, and this was the view from the hammock. What a great time. At this point, we're basically getting packed up and ready to head out. Okay, this is the main core group of volunteers that I traveled with the whole time, for the most part, plus one. From left to right, you've got Dan from Canada, Lou from Berkeley, Paul from San Diego, Zach from Berkeley, Kristen from Oregon, Valeria from Nicaragua, Gigi from San Diego, and me from South Dakota. Woo, we did it! Added to the left and down front, you've got some crucial members of the grid team in Nicaragua, and then on the right you have the beneficiaries, or the family, a multi-generation small family farm up in the mountains. This is a little shot of the scene every night in the neighborhood. Pretty typical. The only thing that's odd is that there was no reggaeton playing tonight, which normally non-stop reggaeton playing all the time. But I would spend most of my evenings in the town going down the block to a pool hall where I was trying to learn this weird game of pool where 5 people can play at the same time, and I didn't know what I was doing, but the guys were really helpful and polite, so I really enjoyed myself. So almost the entire trip I was only able to sleep for about 4 hours a night, which you'd think would be a little more problematic, but it actually wasn't too bad. It afforded me a number of mornings like this one, where I climbed up to a vantage point on top of the hotel and just enjoyed the chorus of the morning. I would usually hang out and journal either inside the hotel or down on the street. And then as soon as there was staff available, I would go get myself some coffee and wait for the others to get ready. And then we would kind of assemble for breakfast and dine together and chat, and then we were off for the day. The name of the town that we were in was called San Rafael del Norte, in Jinotega. Jinotega is the region, but it's also the name of a town in the area as well. This is one of the dogs that would come say hi to me almost every morning. There was no shortage of dogs and cats in the country, so I got all sorts of animal love. I thought this was neat to see, something I'm very familiar with, but in a totally different context. This guy was a farrier, and he was putting a new set of shoes on the horse. This pony was just tied up, waiting for someone to go somewhere. Here again, pretty little roan pony just waiting around. And this cute gray had some packs on, ready to do some work. I love this picture. It was early in the morning before we had left yet. We were just getting ready to load the van, and this guy came trotting by at a pretty good clip, hauling these two big canisters of milk. And I almost feel bad because I just like yelled at him. I'm disculpe, señor, por favor, puedo tomar un foto? Like, excuse me, sir, like, please, can I take your picture? And he kind of like shrugged and then smiled. But I'm really glad I stopped him just because that was just part of the culture there. Like milk was super important, and it was just neat to see this guy like on his way to make a delivery or whatever he was doing. When we were on our way back, going through the town of Jinotega, they had a huge cathedral, and so I decided to bop in and check it out and get some pictures for my mom. She's into that sort of thing, and sure enough, I run into St. Judas Thaddeus once again, and had to spend a moment there contemplating. Also ran into the Beatles a few times. They were on the radio and in murals here and there. This was also a pretty typical scene in Jinotega. This dude just trotting on by with his cart. Everything super simple. This was on our way back through the town, and so it had rained, and so nobody was at the skate park. But when I was there on the previous time, there was a couple kids that were just absolutely shredding. I borrowed one little kid's board and skated for like 2 seconds, and then I was like, nah, I'm gonna fall. I gave it back. It was a different setup than I'm used to, and it was a tiny board. But he liked my Vans, and he said that he wanted to get some. I thought that was funny. This place is La Selva Negra, the Black Forest. It's an ecological resort that we stayed at for our last night. So I woke up at about 3:30 in the morning and decided I would take a hike in the Black Forest with nothing but my headlamp. But I made it about 5 steps down this trail, and I was absolutely terrified. But I remembered that I spotted a machete inside of a small boat near the pond, and so I went and grabbed the machete, and I made myself a walking stick out of a downed branch, and then I felt confident, and I was off. Okay, so you heard that right. So that's terrifying at 4 o'clock in the morning when you're in the Black Forest. I'm assuming it was a howler monkey. If not, it was a choir of demons. I mean, I'm pretty sure howler monkey. Choir of demons, like it almost couldn't be. But the pictures of them are really cute. But when you hear them, it's pretty scary. Later in the morning, I saw this guy mucking out the pond, pulling out some seaweed and such. So I told him about the machete. Solo uso, no tomo. I just use, I don't take. And so I gave his machete back and took a picture. They had a riding stable at La Selva Negra, so I got to go on a horseback ride. It was really fun. I felt dorky in a helmet, but hey, safety first. This was one of the bigger horses I saw in the country, and it was a pleasure to take him out for a spin. At first, I thought this was really bizarre, and then I was like, oh yeah, Christmas time is coming up. So they do have snowmen here as well. On our last day, we went to Cascada Blanca, the white waterfall, and had some lunch and some beverages. It was a nice way to wind down the trip on our way back. Okay, so if anyone's familiar with the second Ace Ventura movie, When Nature Calls with Jim Carrey, I had so many moments from that movie, from there's something on the wing, something, to my medallion, As long as I keep this near me, I will fear no evil, and etc., etc. So many references. At Cascada Blanca, the white waterfall, Islena took a cute picture of me and my friend Kristen. The next morning after the trip had officially ended, I got my rental car and went on an epic quest to try to find a tattoo in Managua. It took like 8 different people helping me out, and I went to like 3 different spots, and the place just was not there. I saw this on a pole at one spot where a tattoo shop used to be, but from there my journey went on and on and on and on. Success, mission complete. I almost had to give up, but I finally was able to find the shop. The guy was super cool. He's one of the oldest tattoo artists in all of Nicaragua. He was an amazing artist. He did top-notch work, and it was super, super cheap. So I'm so grateful. But the tattoo means hold fast from nautical culture, like Sailor Jerry style. Never give up on your dreams, and don't let go. After my tattoo, I stopped to get some snacks, and then I headed straight for El Transito. This is the turnoff off the main road onto the long gravel road down to the beach. It was really, really nice to be able to come back here for one more day to sort of wind down my trip. Got there pretty much just in time for sunset, went down to the beach and hung out with Judy, Dave, and Aurelie, and they're great people, and I had a blast. Hung out with Juan and his brother and a friend of theirs at this cool place called Free Spirit, which was exactly that, just a place full of free spirits, people doing yoga and surfers, and it was an awesome little hostel on the beach, so we had a few drinks. And then the next morning, I spent some time hanging out in the hammock, so please enjoy some time in the hammock listening to the morning sounds. Oh, I'm sorry. I just love listening to the ocean sounds. I actually started listening to a Ocean's Wave soundtrack every night when I was trying to sleep to drown out the reggaeton and the chickens and all the ambient noise that made it even more difficult to sleep. But I love those ocean sounds. I got to go on an early morning horseback ride on Monty once again, and then I made my way past the baseball field. And since it was Sunday morning, the place was bumping. Fishing and baseball are 2 of the most important things in El Transito, and a little bit of tourism. So that was cool to see that happening. And then before I knew it, I was on a plane and I was leaving the country. Timing was fine. I was ready to go, but man, what an amazing trip. In the background, you can see one of the prominent volcanoes, which was a major feature of the country. It's quite a volcanic area. Yeah, adios, Nicaragua. Until next time, hasta luego. Okay, so that's basically it. I hope you enjoyed coming along on this little adventure with me. The next thing I need to do is send out a huge, huge, huge thank you to a bunch of people, starting with my wife, Anna. My love, thank you so much for allowing me to go on an adventure like this, and thank you for holding down the fort while I was gone. I know it was tough. It was tough to be away, and I missed you and everyone else. But I appreciate you so much for helping me out. Um, Next would be Grid Alternatives, the organization itself. Maricela in the office in California for helping facilitate things and get me on the path. The whole Nicaraguan crew at the office down there, especially Islena and Roberto. I appreciate you guys so much, along with Arlan and Lilith and the other helpers down there. I want to thank the family, the Rodriguezes, where we stayed. They were the beneficiaries of the project. They hosted us on their farm. They were very open and welcoming, and I got to interact with them a bunch and learn more about their family culture and their country's culture, and learn some stuff about farming. And so I really appreciate them being a part of the whole experience for me personally. And finally, I need to thank Shelby and Troy Thompson, my little sister and brother-in-law, for sponsoring a huge portion of my trip. If it wasn't for them, it just wouldn't have been possible for me to go at all. And I also want to send out a thank you to my brother Andy in Chicago for throwing some money at me last minute before I took off. That money really helped me be able to rent a car and go to the beach and have some of the like auxiliary fun activities that I got to incorporate into the trip as well. So I'm just extremely, extremely grateful for all of you for helping me out. The last thing that I wanted to do with this video is to stir up interest in my next trip. I'm not sure if I'm crazy or not, but because I feel so strongly about this type of outreach, and because I had such an amazing experience in Nicaragua, I made the decision to sign up for another trip in March of 2023. Um, we're going to be traveling to a small rural community, once again, kind of up in the mountains, to install 15 small solar systems with battery backup to some family homes in a small village. The systems are going to provide power for lighting, and power for charging cell phones. They do have connectivity to the cell network in most of the country, and so just by being able to have lighting, they'll be able to read and study more, and I mean just all the things you could possibly imagine that come with lighting. It's not like they're going to have like lots of entertainment, or I mean these systems are going to be used to really help enhance their lives, make them healthier and happier and just better in so many ways. And everyone deserves to have lights and at least enough power to charge up your cell phone so you can communicate with family and friends and be connected to the world. Um, and so I'm really excited to try to participate in that, but the cost is going to be certainly a challenge, and that's where I'm going to have to rely on the goodwill of other people to help get me down there again. Um, I really feel like I'm being called to do this work, like I was designed for it. I'll try to explain a lot more in my next video because I'm going to do a specific fundraising video just for the upcoming mission. But if you would be able to help me out in some way, preferably financially or otherwise, it would mean the world to me. I would really appreciate it. And I'm kind of at the mercy of others at this point, and I just hope that I've stirred enough interest in enough hearts that I'll be able to go back for at least one more trip. This type of stuff is something I foresee myself trying to continue to participate in, like long into the future, and I've got some big plans and big dreams, but it's all going to start with small steps, and one of the big steps is I need to raise money to make it happen, because I'm I've always said this whole trip, I come from limited means, and opportunities like this are challenging, but if I can rely on the goodwill of others, I think I can make it happen. And so please consider watching that next video and learning more about the trip, and please consider donating. I would really, really appreciate it. All right, thanks a lot. Adios.